Hello and welcome to the Ren Den. I'm Ren and today we're going to do some painting. So this shelf behind me is full of D&D minis and slightly less minis and sort of terrain bits that I've collected. It's not everything I've got, but I don't have a huge collection. So a lot of it fits on that shelf. There's some bits in the back that I got from an aquarium shop that was closing down, so sad for them, but I got a bit of a discount on that. So there's some little bit of land stuff, and there's a tower and like a sort of courtyard and a whole thing. And I really love the way that it looks. Unfortunately, as you can see from here, it looks really boring because a lot of the terrain is like flat pack MDF kits, if you like. I think the brand is called Savage Terrain. The tower is called the Crumbling Tower, and I think I got some other bits from that range as well. And they look really cool close up, but it doesn't exactly have an impact from over here. The thing in the background, by the way, is a map of the Sword Coast that I drew for Storm King's Thunder. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Storm King's Thunder game, so that we could like physically move the pin as they traveled around on it, and I thought that would be a cool backdrop for now. In the long run, I would like to like carpet the bottom of the shelf with like, you can get like dollhouse lawn basically, so sort of green texture, like grass texture, and then do the sides of the shelf with some kind of sky picture panorama thing. I think that would be really cool. But the map is fine in the short term. The problem at the moment I'm having is a foreground. So today we're going to paint some bits. To begin with, I've pulled 4 pieces of terrain that all kind of match. They all are a sort of castle wall with windows in. Some of them are ruined. There's one really beautiful one that isn't, or is a little bit more together anyway. And I thought they would be a good set to do because fundamentally they should be quite straightforward, but these ones all kind of need to look the same, because if I change what I'm doing halfway through, it'll be really obvious. Whereas if there's a slight difference, if I have to mix paint and there's a slight difference between these ones and another bit of the sort of complex, I don't think that's going to be a problem in terms of how it looks. I will try and do one colour at a time, again, to just kind of be consistent. The thing I'm going to do first is paint the cream walls, because A, I'm going to have to mix the paint, and I'd rather faff about with that and then just kind of go. And B, here is quite thin between like the window frame and the stone, so the cream paint is going to get on other things as I'm painting the walls, but that'll be okay if I do it first, because then the other paint that comes afterwards will just cover it, so it's fine. Don't read into my choice of newspaper. I buy a newspaper once a year maybe to use as table coverings for craft, and I tend to just pick whichever is the cheapest and chunkiest at the time. So it is the Telegraph today, but we're just going to have to deal with it. Right, so I am going to work out what a nice angle for you is to film some of this. I'll have my headphones on because I'm going to catch up on some Critical Role while I'm painting. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so we've got no coat, 1 coat, 2 coats. I think that's already looking really nice. So I may have got a little carried away. You know, it's been a while since I've had a good old hyperfixation. I don't think I've moved 3 hours. There's been a biscuit on this table for 3 hours and I haven't eaten it. So this cup of tea is cold. So I've been busy. Here's the situation. I've had to remix the creamy yellowish paint twice. So there is a little bit of colour variation, but I've sort of tried to go back and do little bits of the other ones in the new mixes. So it should just come across as nice variation rather than I ran out of paint variation. I should move this. Here we go. I will put some close-ups of what I've done over this because you're not going to be able to see it in the light that's on this now. But yeah, I finished all of the sort of creamy yellow bits. It does look quite yellow in places, but I think once the brown is in, it will look quite nice. So that's what my plan is to do next. And that should be quite straightforward because I can just use this brown for everything. I don't have to mix anything for that. So that'll be easier to do in little bits. I won't feel the need, maybe, to do it all at once. What I'm going to do is I have to tidy up now because the next thing I need to use this room for is work. So the table can't be covered in paint. So I'm going to fit, it's not going to go back neatly. It'll go back quite haphazardly. I'm going to put all this over there and set myself up a little mini paint station so that like of an evening during the week I can do some painting. But I think this is as far as we're going to get today. I need to go do something else now. And I will check back in with you when I have a little bit more going on. Hello again. So we're in the middle of doing the brown. It's turning out really nicely. I don't know if you can see some of that. Look at that. Look how beautiful that is. I love it. So we've still got quite a ways to go on painting the brown. We're still going to do the tower. Got to do the outside of this, which I think is going to be a little bit delicate, but I think I'm really pleased with how it's coming together. I think we'll get there. I've got it on like a folded section of here so that in between, like when I have to go to work, I can just move this whole thing and slide it to the side of the desk. It's so nice having a giant desk. The last desk I had was like half the width of this one and it just would have been impossible. But yeah, I'm remembering to drink tea today. So that'll be good. And yeah, I guess we better get back into it. I know I mentioned earlier, by the way, that painting these is my current hyperfixation, and I just want to clarify, I am actually autistic. I'm not just saying it as a turn of phrase. So I just wanted to make that clear because, I don't know, I can never tell if it's obvious to people or not. Like, sometimes when I tell people, they're like, and then sometimes I tell people and they're like, And like, I do feel sometimes a little bit insecure about sort of identifying as autistic, but also I have a piece of paper that says I am, so it's not really going to be a thing that's in question. And I don't really have a grand point about it particularly. I was sort of thinking about making like a video about it, about my diagnosis and, you know, the ways in which it affects my life and stuff, but the truth is it's kind of hard to tell the ways in which it affects my life because it is my life, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, there are some things that happen where it's obvious that me being autistic has had a big impact on the situation or the interaction or whatever. And there are some things that happen where it's not quite so clear cut. And I think, although I enjoy a good bit of introspection, I think what I come up with in that introspection isn't always something that people agree with. So I don't want to be like, so that means I'm like this. And then for you guys to be like, no, it doesn't. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of have said it on the channel explicitly. Not that it really matters, because at time of recording, my subscribers are still in the single digits. So A of all, if you are one of those people, thank you so much. It's nice to feel like I might be sort of connecting with some people. But it also sort of takes the pressure off in terms of like, I'm not having to curate what I say to a big audience quite so much. And obviously I would like the sort of viewership of the channel to grow and to kind of build a community of people who maybe don't have like a hobby but enjoy lots of different things and enjoy learning into adulthood and being curious about the world and being sincere, in a sort of cringe culture is dead sort of a way. You know, it would be lovely to have a sort of community of people who were kind of thought along those lines, and to just encourage people to kind of take chances and do things that maybe you're not great at straight away, because I'm not always fantastic at doing that. But sometimes it's easier to do it with friends, you know? Having Instagram and YouTube as sort of complementary platforms works quite well for me. And sometimes it's easier, like if I have a sort of low social energy day, like my needs become very specific in terms of the energy that I have to interact with people online. And having multiple avenues to do that is quite helpful, because it doesn't mean that I kind of exclude myself from things, if that makes sense. I do also have a Tumblr, actually, which I'll put in the description because I can't remember exactly what my handle is right now, which I use sort of inconsistently, but I like having, so basically I have a sort of long form content place, YouTube, and then Instagram as a sort of short form and images place, and then Tumblr as a sort of images and words place. So they kind of overlap, which is quite nice. I feel like I've always got sort of a place that suits what I want to make. My diagnosis is quite recent, so in the kind of grand scheme of my life. So, you know, I'm still sort of working out how to talk about it, really. Like, I spent a long time thinking how I like see myself in a lot of autistic experiences without necessarily knowing that I could be like, it's because I'm autistic. So it's sort of felt almost like taboo to talk about it so bluntly. Like, I would describe my experiences rather than just being able to sort of label them. And now that I have the diagnosis, I can do that. But it's definitely taking me a while to sort of figure out how to do that and kind of do it with confidence without still feeling a bit like an imposter. So, you know, maybe this channel will kind of chart a little bit of that journey. We'll see. I think definitely the fact that I enjoy things that are very tactile and find it very easy to get buried in a task for 6 hours are both quite relevant parts of my identity when it comes to the sort of content of this channel, and also the fact that I am autistic. So I'm sure it will come up. But yeah, I sort of just wanted to kind of address it. It's not so much a secret anymore, which is also quite nice, because that was making me feel a little bit self-conscious. So yeah, I've still got a decent amount of brown painting to do. I've got to finish the windows on this, and then I've got to do the banisters on this, the floorboards, possibly some of this. I can't work out if I want this to be stone or wood yet. And then I think the ladder as being as wood makes sense. So, but I think that's it in my pile for brown. Yeah, we're making progress. Okay, so we finished the brown. It's looking pretty good. Obviously the bits that have more kind of wood on them are looking more finished, but doing the window frames is great, and it's making me feel more confident in my choices with the walls, because I was worried that they were too yellow, but actually against the brown they're turning out quite nicely. Because the wood is laser cut, the edges are kind of sooty, and obviously when I was building them I tried to clean off as much of that as possible because I was just covered in it. But there is still a reasonable amount on there, so some of the walls kind of look a little bit patchy because of like smears of that, but actually I think it adds to the whole like ruin vibe, so I'm not mad about that necessarily. So the next thing we got to do is the stone, which obviously grey maybe. Here's the thing, I was looking up some like stone painting tutorials, and actually a lot of them were involving brown and then kind of layering it over to sort of desaturate it, which I quite liked the look of. So rather than just painting straight on these and deciding that it looks terrible and not really being able to fix it, I have found the kind of leftover scrappy bits of, see, I'm covered in it again, of the MDF from building the kits. And I'm going to use those. They're not very big, but I think they'll be big enough for me to see, like, if you layer this colour over this colour, what happens, sort of thing. So, I definitely remember which of these is which. This one I painted with the mix. This one was 2 layers of yellow and 1 of grey. This is 1 layer of yellow and 1 of grey. The wash, I mean. This is just the wash, and then I did do an extra one of just the grey paint because it suddenly occurred to me that I hadn't just considered painting it grey. Let me just, out of curiosity, I'm going to paint, yeah, this is the wash. I'm going to paint half of this in a second layer because I'm just curious to see what will happen. I think just the mix is too yellow. Like, so this is this one. I think that's too yellow. It's not going to come across cleanly against the walls. So you can see the walls are quite yellow. You are unfortunately looking at this under artificial light, so you're just going to have to trust me also. But that against that doesn't read stone. It just reads sort of mustard coloured. This against this is quite cold, but it would be very clear, and I've not really worried so much about tone with any of the others. Like, I painted everything brown before I even really looked at it. So that would function. Would I be happy with it is the other question. This is the wash. I think that's just going to be too mild. It's not going to read like stone. And then this is the 2 layers of yellow and 1 of the wash, and like obviously that's not going to do anything. This is 1 yellow layer of yellow and 1 of wash, and then this is 2 layers of wash, and then that one is just the grey. Irritatingly, it's also just occurred to me that I could make a wash of the ochre and paint that over the grey and see if that does anything. I feel like I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be, but welcome to me doing anything. So this is basically what I did for the last round of yellow, although obviously I used less yellow or something. I don't know. And then I'm going to do a little bit of just a quick one over half of this little fragment. Now obviously I should, and loosely will give that a little bit of time to dry, but to my mind it's yellower than this, which I decided was too yellow. So our options are these or the top bit of that. See, the thing about this investigation is I couldn't go over it with a yellow wash because it would just be yellow, and that is not going to work for me. This one, is it brown and is it grey enough though? Is it going to read as stone? Right, after all that, I'm going to paint everything grey because it was way less stressful when I was painting the brown, knowing that I just had to make the same colour come out the tube every time and I didn't have to remix it. I think there might be an opportunity at the end of doing the grey to maybe mix up like a little dab of the yellow in it and do some bricks to kind of add a little bit of variation. But I've not gone with that level of realism for any other part of this, so I think to do it for the stone would look out of place anyway. So, I'm so sorry, that was a lot of drama for, I'm just going to paint it grey. But, yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do. Do you know what? It's simplistic, but I think it works in the context of everything else. Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I think broadly I'm quite happy with that, and because a little bit of the MDF shows through, actually that's okay because it's not like as cold of a grey as it could be. Alright, time to paint everything grey. So I finished painting the grey. Hooray, that rhymed. It's alright in terms of tone, but it's quite flat as a colour. I think because it's covering such kind of wider pieces. Like, so on this, I think it looks really nice because it's like little bits and the wood there is textured. But like on the gates, I think it's just too flat. So what I'm going to try and do is a little bit of shading. I don't want to give myself too big of a task because there's quite a lot of stone here and I don't want to have to apply something fiddly to every single part of it. I can already sort of feel that like the end of the task is within sight and the hyperfixation is waning because it's nearly done. So I am slightly kind of pushing through to the end here. What I've thought is I've tried on a couple of sides of this, because this is my least favourite part of it. It's a sort of guard box thing, I think. But like the window frames are flat, whereas they're like 3D on some of the other stuff, and I just think that it doesn't look as good. So, because I was less worried about getting it wrong, I've experimented with doing a little bit of shading. One side has definitely come out nicer than the other, but I think over the course of the whole thing, I think it will look quite nice. And then all I've got to do is roof tiles after that, which I think I'm going to put a little bit of blue in the grey and see if that makes a nice colour for those. So that's a short enough task on the end that I feel like I can just about get that done. And then rebuild the shelf. So, shading next. Let's go. What do we think? It's better. Maybe I need to put a little bit of grey in the black. Maybe the black is too severe. Okay, let's just take the edge off. Let's try the fourth side on this one, and then after that, we get a little bit more complicated. I'm quite pleased with that. Now I just gotta do that to all of this. Wish me luck. That's the last of the stone done. So now we just have to do the roofs. So we've got, I think, 4 sections of roof. We've got this top of this well, which is quite nice. We've got the top of the tower, which I think, if I get the colour right, will look really impressive. We've got okay, the top of that building. Just a little bit there. And we've got the top of this building to do as well. We're going to use the grey as the main base. I'm going to do 3 blobs of that. This is highly scientific. And then I want it to be darker than that, so I'm going to do, I'm going to put my finger in the paint, first of all. And then I'm going to do a blob of black. That's quite a big blob. And then we're going to do a blob of blue, if I can get the thing open. Because I'm going for a sort of slate grey. Get my mixing stick. I don't want it to read blue necessarily, but it needs to be a different tone than the stone because otherwise it will look too samey. So I'm just going to add sort of successive bits of blue until the vibe is right for this, which is going to be incredibly subjective. I think that's good. I think if we go any further than that, it stops looking, weirdly it's going almost less blue. But hopefully that will be nice. Like with all of this, I can always paint over it if I hate it. I'm trying to do quite a thin coat of paint because I do want the sort of existing texture of the MDF to come through. It is still quite grey, isn't it? Right, plan B. I should have done testers again, but here we are. It's late and this is literally the last bit of the project, so I'm sort of cutting corners a little bit. Okay, broadly that's the same of each, if not slightly more blue. Okay, we have basically made the same colour by the back door, haven't we? Okay, I'm going to put more blue in it. Let's try that. I think I've made it hard on myself by using such huge quantities of paint. But it's a bit late for that now. I always forget whenever I try and mix like off black that it's so strong. Well, we're not going to run out of paint if this is the mix that I use. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this onto here and we'll see what that looks like. It's very black, isn't it? Okay, attempt number 3. I'm going to put that much blue paint in, and then I'm going to use this to bring not even that much, like a stick worth of that over. See, that's kind of coming out a better colour, I think. Okay, so what we've got now is, you can't really see because it's under artificial light, so I'm sorry about that. It will become clear I'll try and shoot the reveal photos in actual daylight so that it's slightly more obvious. But I promise, this one's actually blue. So let's try on, I'm just going to use the well again because we're just going to have to keep it going. See, that's now very blue. I mean, actually, that's quite nice. Is that going to suit? I think that could work, actually. If I did a base coat of this one and then went over it with that one, I think that could look quite nice. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this bit next. And I'm going to try doing this one first and then going over it with this one, because I do think it needs a dark base for it to work. And if that works, I will carry on and finish up. And if it doesn't work, I will be back with more paint wasting experiments. And we are finished. Unfortunately, it is almost 11. So I can't show you any of this in nice lighting right now. I've done a really cool thing on the roofs, which I'm really pleased with, but I don't quite know how the paint's going to dry. I used the dark colour as the base coat for everything, and then I went over with like 4 or 5 coats of dry brushing over the top to try and create a little bit of depth in the colouring with the lighter shade of mixed blue. I don't know if the colours are going to be distinct enough that it will make a difference. It's really hard to tell under artificial light, so I'll have to wait till the morning and figure that out. If it looks indistinguishable and bad, I can always just mix a slightly less intensely dark blue and do some highlights. if it looks indistinguishable and good, then I'll just leave it. The work is done, and I will see you in the morning to see if the result is nice. It's finished. This took longer than I thought it was going to. It's been about a week of sort of snatched evenings and things, but I'm really pleased with it. I'll put some footage over this of close-up stuff so you can see, but the effect is really, really nice. I'm just looking forward to getting it on the shelf so that we can kind of enjoy it at full strength. The roof tiles have dried basically black, but I'm okay with it because I think in the light there is still something of a kind of differentiation of colour that's enough to make it not seem flat. And actually, I think if it was blue, it would look a little bit odd because I want it to be, for the purposes of the shelf, I want it to be quite generic. You can a little bit see on the close-up of the top of the well the colour difference, but it is very subtle. So lesson learned for next time, make colours more obviously different. Midway through painting the stone, I was so like, I've made a mistake, it's the wrong colour, blah, blah, blah. But actually putting a little bit of texture on it, just a little bit of texture on it, has worked wonders. So I'm really pleased with that. So let's get it all on the shelf and we'll see how it looks. So there it is in all its glory. Even at a distance on the shelf, it looks more like something is happening there and less like a pile of stuff is just dumped there. Close up, it looks really impressive. Yeah, I think the hyperfixation faded as quickly as it had arrived, so it was a struggle to see it through, but I'm really pleased that I finished it. There's obviously some little bits and bobs that I could do to kind of make it more refined, but it works for what it needs to be. The next thing to do on that shelf will be paint some more minis, because this guy is unpainted and some of the bears that are more prominent, the like bear orc archers, are a little bit too obviously unpainted, at least to my eyes. So I think the next thing will be a little round of mini painting, which is fun because I haven't done that in a little while. But I think I probably need a break from painting at the moment, and maybe I will do something else in the interim. Maybe I'll finally start my embroidery sampler that I keep talking about. I guess stick around if you want to find out. Feel free to subscribe in that regard, and also like and comment and all that jazz if you would like to do so. But otherwise, I will see you on whatever that next project is. Take care.